The Lagos State Independent Electoral Commission has announced July 12, 2025 as the date for the local government election in Lagos State. Now, this election will cover 20 local government areas and 37 local council development areas with a total of 57 council chairmanship seats, 376 councillorship positions, all up for grabs. Well, to discuss this, I'm joined by Ayodele Adio, is the National Publicity Secretary and also Youth Party for Youth Party at Lagos State. He joins virtually. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
All right, Ayodele Adio. Preparations are in top gear for the local government council elections, and you are in the opposition party in the state, the Youth Party for Lagos State. Are you comfortable so far as a participant in this forthcoming election with the arrangements you've seen?
I'm not sure that there is a single political party that can claim to be comfortable with all of the arrangements that seem to have preceded the July 12 elections. There are a gamut of issues that appear that, the outcome of these elections, has been predicted by the ruling party. Because first of all, the guidelines that were supposed to guide the conduct of these elections were not made public, until sometime, last week or a fortnight ago, which left many of the political parties, including the Youth Party, completely blinded. Even more importantly, the law governing the local government elections in Lagos was first passed in secrecy sometime in January, because we even got to learn that it was passed in January during a parley with, LASIEC and senior LASIEC officials that was held about 2 weeks ago, right? So the law governing an important election like a local government election was shrouded in secrecy, that not a single member of any political party in Lagos knew the governing law that was surrounding the local government.
You said
election.
The law governing the election. Sorry, please. I need to come in here. You said the law governing this election was shrouded in secrecy. How did that happen? How are you not carried along? How could they have passed the law without, you are major stakeholders. It's for you, without your involvement.
So that's the million-dollar question. Now, recall that last year there was a public hearing that was called. The amendment, the proposed amendments, in the local government, Lagos State local government law, which we were fully represented. My political party put forward a memoranda. In fact, I also made a presentation in that particular public hearing, raising pertinent issues, with the proposed amendment of that law, as did so many other civil society organizations, political parties, and a few concerned lawyers who made their positions well known. Unfortunately, after that exercise concluded, not a single one of the participants in that public hearing knew exactly what had gone into that new law, knew when that law was passed, or had any clue whatsoever if any consideration was taken from the public hearing. I repeat, we only got to know that there was a new law, or that law had been passed after a parley with LASIEC officials about 2 weeks ago. Not a single political party, and I even dare say that even those who were representing the ruling party had no clue, what the amendments in the new law had been passed. So it's worrying that we were going into an election not clear about the legal framework that was supposed to guide that particular election.
So what should be...
It's also important to stress, because in your introduction, you made mention about the fact that elections were going to hold in 20 local governments and 37 LCDAs. Now, that was a combustible issue in the debates that we had in the public hearing, because just like the Youth Party did, and in the presentation I made on that day, several other lawyers and several other political parties had made the clear argument that it was illegal to contest elections in 37 LCDs that are not recognized by the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Unfortunately, we seem to have carried on business as usual. The media seems to also propagate the narrative that elections are going to hold in 37 LCDAs when it's a clear illegality. Now, and I say this because if indeed those 37 LCDAs are recognized by law, Honorable Jimmy Benson, Honorable Faleke, who represent Ikeja constituency, will not be sponsoring an amendment in the National Assembly to recognize the 37 LCDAs as legitimate local governments in Lagos. Because they also recognize that those LCDAs are not recognized by law, and hence the reason for sponsoring that bill in the National Assembly so that the Constitution can be amended to recognize those 37 LCDAs. And until that amendment is made, it is illegal, it is unconstitutional to conduct or elect members into those LCDAs that are complete strangers, to law. Mind you, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu was the one that created these LCDAs. He was so passionate about them that he fought for them up until the Supreme Court. He's been president for 2 years now. His administration only sends money to the 20 local governments recognized in Lagos. As passionate as he is about the 37 LCAs, none of them gets a dime from Abuja. So why are we perpetuating this gross and brazen illegality to conduct elections into offices that are not recognized by law? How is it going to be funded?
You've raised some issues here that are pretty much pertinent. Number one, you talked about the law, the amended law guiding this entire process just, being, in your preview just about 2 weeks ago, and right now the number of local governments and, being constitutionally recognized. Where does all of these issues, huge issues that you've raised, where does it leave this process? I mean, as a major participant in it, I'm talking from the angle of your political party, should the election still go ahead?
Now, I can tell you for free that, my party has written a letter of demand to LASIEC, urging them to make a publication to state clearly that elections will only hold in 20 local governments. And part of the demands that we have made and written to INEC is to also have them make a publication to say that they will not be delineating polling units across Lagos State. That the polling units where elections will be conducted will be the polling units that have been designed and the registration areas as designed, by the federal government and by INEC. And so there will not be any manipulation of polling units in Lagos. We have also urged them to make a publication, to make a commitment that, the procedure of voting in Lagos will be such that only eligible voters will be allowed to vote on that election day. And the names of such voters would have been published prior at the wards or registration areas where those elections are going to be taking place. So we have made these demands. We have written this demand letter to LASIEC and have given them 7 days to comply. Now, failure to do that will be approaching the courts to compel them to do the right thing. So we're going to pursue this to a logical conclusion, just so that we have clarity, on these matters pertaining to local government elections. But from where I sit, I am clear on a number of issues. That one, elections into LCDAs are completely illegal, especially when you're going to fund these LCDAs by allocations that are coming from the federal government. It is clear to us as a political party that the State Electoral Commission has no powers to delineate polling units or registration areas. It is clear to us that for the integrity of these elections, we must ensure an accreditation process that ensures that only registered voters are allowed to vote in this election and not people who can dangle any ID card, on election day. So these and so many other issues that will be taking the commission to task, to ensure that the process is credible, that the process is transparent, and that this impunity and illegality does not continue.
I mean, you talk about voter registration, the right voters being, allowed to vote on that day. But also, if you look at it in reality, when it comes to local government elections, there's usually a large amount of voter apathy where turnout in many parts is usually low. So, I mean, as a party, is there anything you're doing to sort of ramp up awareness? What do you think can be done to improve this?
So awareness is not the problem with local government elections. The problem is a perception of an unfair playing field. The reason people do not turn out to participate in local government elections in Lagos is because that, the position is that the outcomes are usually predetermined by the ruling party. And people do not want to waste their time participating in an election that has been manipulated from ab initio. Now that's the problem. The process lacks credibility, right? And the elections in itself, are riddled with all sorts of irregularities, with all sorts of impunity. And that discourages electorates to participate in that process. And that is exactly why that as part of our strategy leading into these July 12 elections, we are also pursuing simultaneously, certain legal actions in court that will confer a certain level of credibility to the process, which will inspire citizens with a bit of hope and confidence that their votes will count, and hopefully we can see a more decent turnout in the July elections. Because without those procedural issues addressed in court, that we can use that to give confidence to the people that their votes will count, it will be business as usual, and you would have a voter turnout of less than 5%, in most local governments, which is abysmal, which is worse than apathy. It's a coronation exercise, if you asked me. And that cannot continue to stand in a constitutional democracy like ours. Local government elections should be competitive, it should be transparent, it should be fair, it should be credible, and will ensure that we do all that is necessary to begin to make the process a lot more credible and to level the playing field, so that we can inspire the electorates to come out, and vote for whatever party that they so, desire.
I mean, talking about credibility, you made a reference, in your analysis, you kept talking about the ruling party, and then you kept also talking about issues of, intimidation and all of that, manipulation, doing, electoral system. I mean, as an opposition party, you represent the Youth Party, and permit me, to correct me if I'm wrong, I also understand that you might even be contesting. Do you feel, number one, on the issue of security, do you as an opposition feel safe? And so far, what has your experience as a party been so far in Lagos State, particularly under the leadership of the ruling All Progressives Congress?
So I can tell you this for free. In the last local government elections, I was primarily responsible for coordinating the situation room for my party, where we had a very brilliant candidate ran election in Etiosa. Now, during that election, I can tell you firsthand the wanton, reckless illegalities that happened in that election, such that, you can just show an ID card that you're a painter and you'll be allowed to vote. You can show an ID card that you're an electrician and you'll be allowed to vote. And so that means you have people voting in multiple polling units at the same time. You have people crisscrossing, all sorts of abuse and impunity. Even worse is that people wake up on election day to come and vote in the polling units that they know, and they are told that their names is in some other polling unit, in some different local government, or in 10, 20 streets away. Now, all of these shenanigans are usually the tricks that those in power play to discourage people from participating in the process. And to your point about violence, of course, there usually is a lot of voter intimidation, right? And a lot of people are harassed or coerced to vote for the ruling party, and things like that. But what amazes me, my dear friend, is that, despite all of these impunity, despite the voter suppression and intimidation, they still struggle to muster a sizable amount of votes, after the elections or after the total numbers are counted. And this is why I strongly believe that if we can give confidence to the people that their votes will count, and we can ensure that the courts do its job to ensure that the process is a lot more credible by compelling LASIEC to follow a set of ground rules, I can guarantee you that they will lose so many councillorship seats in Lagos, and I can dare you that they will vote a lot of chairmanship seats in Lagos. And you're right, that I'll be contesting the elections, and there's no doubt about it, that Etiosa, where I'll be running, the ruling party would come a distant second in that election, if not third, not just because of the work that we're doing on ground, but because of the level, the level of anger that the people have for the broken services, the broken public services in the entire Etiosa local government. Street lights don't work, roads are terrible, the environment is a complete mess, and it's like local governments are completely absent.
All right, Ayodele, because we're really pressed, for time, I would just want to switch this conversation to another, pressing issue. I mean, you represent the Youth Party. You also said you would run in this upcoming local government elections in Lagos State. But that would take me to a statement by the senator, that's Ireti Kingibe, on youths in Nigeria. Permit me to read part of what she said in that snippet. She said, I have said it, Nigerian youths are complacent, they are quiet, all they do is grumble. We need to have constructive interaction. All I hear is grumbling and insults. This is not helpful. The country belongs to the youths. They should own it. Instead of a proper agenda or program, they will threaten a strike that everyone knows, they are not going to go on. How does this achieve anything? I mean, as a political party, how do you respond? For representing young persons, youth party.
Well, I'm not sure the context, with which she made that statement, but I do know that she won an unlikely election to the Senate because of the large support that she got from young people, many of whom she didn't work for that support. She was a beneficiary, of the decision of many young people to want to course correct and change direction in this country. So I can say for a fact that she was a beneficiary of a movement of young people who wanted better for their country, and who put their monies where their mouth was and stood at the polls on election day to vote her political party into office. So to that extent, I would argue, that it might not be completely true that you have too many laid-back youth. The truth is, while you have a youthful population that is delusioned, and the reason why they are disillusioned is largely because of the poor level of governance in this country over the last few decades. There's unemployment, there is poverty on the rise, young people are losing hope by the day, and they see the political elites driving the latest cars, their children getting education in foreign universities, getting the top jobs in the country, and things like that, while they continue to sink, even though they are getting more educated than their parents. So young people are rightfully disillusioned. But at the end of the day, our job as a political party or as leaders is to continue to inspire hope in these young people, to make them believe that there is an alternative path to restore order to this country and to build a better country that works for everyone and not just the ruling elite. And we cannot relent in doing that. And we won't cast aspersions at them, but we'll continue to encourage them to participate in the process. That though challenging and though disillusioning, is the only path for us to take our country back. All right.
Ayodele, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for your time. Ayodele Adio is the National Publicity Secretary for the Youth Party, is joining virtually from Lagos. Once again, thank you.